Okay, so we have this cute little puffer fish. I'm going to do this really simple so that you guys can draw along with me. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is change your canvas to a nice blue, muted blue color. Doesn't really matter what color blue. You can choose a different color if you'd like. I went with this sort of blue. Okay, so now we're going to need yellow because he is yellow. So we want to make a new layer. And I'm going to use the ellipse tool. So that's under the ribbon here, ellipse. I'll make a nice little fat shape like that and then drag my yellow in. Now we want the yellow to be a little pale. This one is a little bit rich, so I'm just going to bring it over. That's better. So you just don't want it to be too much of a dark yellow. You want it to be a little bit pale. Okay, so the next step, if you haven't downloaded my brushes, I'm going to be using graffiti brush and butter blade. You can use stock brushes. Graffiti brush that's pretty much what it looks like. So just find a brush that pretty much looks like this, hard airbrush maybe. And butter blade is sort of similar, it's just smaller. It's like a smaller version of that. So you don't have to download my brushes. If you can, they're free. But if not, just use similar brushes to this. Okay. So we can stay on this layer for now. And we see he has this little piece on the back. So we're going to start here. And we're going to come off. And we're going to bend it down. And I'm just going to hold it so it makes it nice and pretty. Like so. Okay, that looks pretty good. So we have this shape here. What I'm going to do now is just shade this in a little bit. So I'm going to alpha lock this layer. I'm going to tap the yellow. I'm going to bring it darker. And then I'm going to go back to my brushes and I'm just going to use a soft brush. You can use a soft air brush. Make it fairly big. And then just softly shade underneath here. And just go back and forth and just layer up that shadow. And now I'm going to go a little bit darker. And I'll just make the bottom a little bit darker. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. So now we're going to go back to our original yellow. You can always color pick from the top if you'd like. And I'm still on the airbrush, still on this same layer, still alpha locked. And now I'm just going to shade in. I'll make the brush a little bit smaller. And I'm just going to shade in the very bottom. Gives it that nice 3D look. And this is a little trick. Anything that you're shading in, eyes, any sort of round thing that you're going to shade in, that's a cool little trick. Is just to shade it dark and then bring in the light, that little light pop on the bottom. As you can see here, it's shaded, but then he also has this light, probably from the white sand that might be underneath him. Okay, that looks pretty good so far. So now we're going to make a layer below our little guy. So we'll make a new layer below him. I'm going to use graffiti brush. Doesn't have to be too big. Something like that is fine. So now we're going to do these fins that he has on him. So one is about here. Just go up. Pretty simple. If you want, you can hold it. It's a little less like the fin, but if you want, you can hold it. I'm just going to bring it up. I think that looks more like a, whoops. Just make sure that you close the shape since it's underneath. I think that looks pretty good. So now I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom. I'm just going to come down like so. And I'm going to do that again because I want it to be that's better. I'll make the whole thing a little bit smaller. I'm just going to use freehand. I kind of want them to be the same, around the same size. So I'll just make that a little bit smaller. That's better. And now I'll do the same thing back here. We can't see it, but I Googled it, and their fins pretty much look like this. Let me give myself a little more room here. Slide this guy over. Okay, so now I just want to fill this in. And that's looking pretty good for now. So he also has this fin up here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new layer above our main shape. So new layer above that shape. And then I'll go back to our graffiti brush. And I'm just going to make this fin here. So it sort of comes out. And actually another trick that you can do is you can actually make it pretty dark. That way you can see it. So I'll go up. Kind of comes down like this. Like so. Try to keep these shapes nice and clean and round. And now that we have that shape there, we can go back to our previous color and we can just fill it in. Okay, so let's give him some eyes. So I'm going to take the regular color, his normal color, yellow, and I'm going to make a solid circle. So this is my faves brush set, but you can always make a solid circle by just, you can use graffiti brush and tap. Oops. Make a new layer above. You can tap like that, or you can just use the ellipse tool and you can make your circle that way. But it's easy if you download my brushes, then I have the solid circle, which will just make your life a lot easier. So solid circle, we're going to do it on this layer underneath. So we'll do it on the same layer as these fins. That way we can adjust it if we need. So let's check out the size. It's actually not too bad. So we just sort of want to match this a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, I think that's pretty good. So now we'll take that same circle. We're going to change the color to white. And now we'll make a layer above our main shape and underneath our last fin. So now we have this circle, and that's actually a decent spot. Yeah, that's a good spot for the eye. Okay, so we have the eye there. And now we're going to make another new layer above this body. So we're going to make a new layer, and then we're going to find a nice blue that goes well with the yellow. So, oops, Let me go to graffiti brush. Something like this looks really nice with the yellow. So that's a really nice blend. So he's got blue here, but I don't really feel the need to match his blue, although it's pretty close. It's probably pretty close. So once you find your blue, I'm going to use butter blade because it's a little bit smaller. It gives me a little more control. So remember, we're on a new layer above the body layer and underneath this eye. So now for his mouth, I'm just going to make a shape like this, bring it in, and then come back out. And let me fill that. And then I can see how it looks. I think that looks pretty good. Now if you think you've messed up on this shape, you can also use your eraser. And I'm just going to use graffiti brush as an eraser. You can sort of clean your lines up. So this part curves here. I think that looks pretty good. It's always a good idea to keep your lines nice and clean. You can take your eraser and just sort of, go over if you tend to have messy lines. And sometimes you just have to get close and really sculpt those lines. I don't do that all the time, but that's just how if I want something to be really crisp and clear, like for example this line is kind of wavy. One of the tricks that I do, let me go to the layer with the fins. I'll make sure I have the same color by color picking. I'll use butter blade. Let me make sure it's not alpha locked. Nope. So if I want to get this really straight, so let's make one nice long stroke. And sometimes I'll hold it and see if that auto straightening, that makes it really, really smooth. So that's just another trick. If your lines tend to be shaky, try the eraser first, but then also use that arc and then hold it and use that to make your edges nice and crisp. Alright, let's get back to our little fish here. Okay, so before we move on, let's shade in these fins. So we're going to alpha lock these fins. And we're going to go back to our darker yellow. We'll go back to our airbrush. And we'll just airbrush in the back of these little fins. Or where they come out of the body. That's where we're going to airbrush. Okay. Just give them a little love here. Okay, so now let's go to the eye layer. Right here. And we want to make them a little happier. So I'm going to take the eraser as a graffiti brush. And I'm just going to kind of erase in a nice curve like that. Let me make sure I get the right curve. It's important. Yeah, that makes them a little bit happier. Essentially, I'm just sort of mimicking a cheek. So that's why I'm doing that here. I'm mimicking a cheek as though like he's smiling, and this is his cheek. And it might even be worth it for me to continue this line and actually carve out the mouth. So let's take a look at that. Let's just see. I'm going to use this line. If I was to use this, come down, and then carve out the mouth Let's see how that looks. I think that actually helps. It actually helps. So we'll keep it. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. Alright, so I'm going to alpha lock. We're back on the body. And we have our darker color. And I'm going to use the airbrush. And I'm just going to airbrush the top as well. Not too dark. Just want to give them a little shape up top. And now I'm going to go back to my original yellow graffiti brush. And I'm just going to... So it's about this thick. Can't really see it because let me un-alpha lock just so I can show you how thick it is. So it's about that thick, and I want to go over the eye like that. So make sure this is alpha locked. And I just want to put this a yellow line like that. Sort of like so it just looks like this eye is the same kind of puffy eye over here. Okay, so now let's get to some fun bits. First, let's go to the fins, and we'll go back to that same blue. So I'm just going to color pick this blue. Our fins are alpha locked. And now I'm just going to go over the edges of the fins, which is really cool. So you can just take a look at our fish here, and it just has a really cool pattern on the edge of the fins. I'll even do it to the back. I don't think the back has it in real life, but why not? And we also can't forget this fin here. So I'm going to alpha lock this fin in the middle and make sure we do this one as well. Okay. And also, I probably could have done this beforehand, but that's okay. I'm just going to take the darker color, yellow, and I'm going to use airbrush. And I'm just going to airbrush a little bit of this fin, just so we can see it. Do a little bit on the bottom too. And I'm going to go back to that blue, and I'm going to go on the body. I'm going to go on the body layer. And it seems like he has blue gills. So I'm just going to do a nice, whoops, let me go back to my graffiti brush. And I'm just going to do a nice blue gill area there. Okay. So now for the mouth, we're going to alpha lock the mouth. So once that's alpha locked, I'm going to use a darker blue. So I'm using a darker blue, and I'm just going to come around the side like this, and then sort of fade off the bottom. I'll just clean it up a little bit. Okay. And that kind of gives the impression that there's depth inside the mouth. And I don't know if we want to put a tongue or not. Let's not put a tongue. We'll just go straight for some big old teeth. So now for the teeth, we're just going to go with a nice round shape for the top teeth. And we'll give them really big chompers for the bottom. I think that looks pretty good. Alright, so let's add some details to the teeth. So I'm going to go with Sketchmaster 1, and I'm just gonna make this a little bit darker. And Sketchmaster 1 is just, you can use Procreate pencil if you're not using my brushes. I'm going to just draw a line down the center, like so. Oops. Alright, so what else do we want to do here? Let's give him some eyeballs. So one thing that I really think is fun to do is I'm going to take this eye layer, I'm going to hit select on the eye, and then I'm going to go back to the layers, and then I'm going to go to the body. I'm going to tap the body. So the only thing that's selected is the shape of this eye, but on the body. So now I'm going to do a 3-finger swipe down, and I'm going to do cut. So now if I hide this, then there's a hole straight through. I'm going to bring this eye layer below. I'm going to hit the plus, so I have a new layer, black, and I'm going to use my solid circle again and just add our little circle there. So remember, this is on its own layer. So now I'm going to take this little pointer tool, transform tool, pointer tool. I'm still on freeform, so I'm just going to make his eye and make him looking forward. So all I did was just transform the circle, and I just pushed it forward to the front part of his eye. Okay. Okay, now I always do a black line behind the back of his eye, so let's see if we can get that working. So what I'm going to do is alpha lock the body again. And I'm going to go with Butterblade. So now that the body's alpha locked, we should just be able to draw on that. So if I take my black marker and I bring it around, that was actually pretty good. See, one trick is you can start even where you can't see it. If you need it to start creeping up, then you just start below. You just start below the whatever is alpha locked. So let me see if I can do that again. That was pretty good. I'll even hold it. That way it'll be nice and perfect. We'll give him a little tag there, which is what I like to do. I think he's looking pretty good so far. I feel like we need to do the other eye, but that might be a lot of work. We'll stick with this guy for now. We'll stick with just one eye for now. Okay, so the last things that I want to do is just add a little bit of detail. We'll add some shadows here. So I'm going to select, I selected this white, and which layer? I'm going to do it right on this layer here, actually. So I'm not even going to select it. I'm just going to do it right on this layer. So I'm going to take the color black. I'm going to use graffiti brush. And I'm going to lower the opacity to 30%. And then I'm just going to make another line going across. I'm going to hold it just like that. So that makes it look like there's a shadow. Another way to do that, if you find that that's a bit difficult, another way to do that is you can select the eye. So I selected this white part. You can't see all the little lines, but when you select, it just essentially the only thing that you can draw on is whatever is selected. But you don't have to draw on that layer. So you can make a new layer, keep everything selected, and then you can use graffiti brush at 100% opacity, but you can lower the opacity of the layer. So now the layer is at 30%. So now you can, it doesn't matter if you mess up. So we can do the same thing, hold it, and then we have our shadow. And we can actually do the same thing. I'm going to actually lower the opacity to 20%. And we can do the same thing with the teeth, or at least the top tooth. So we're going to do a little bit of a shadow here. I'll just hold it so we can get it prettier. And just a little bit of a shadow on the top teeth. I think it looks pretty good so far. So now I'm going to merge the eyes. And let's see, so he has all these speckles on him, and they're just on his body. So I'm going to hit select on the body. I'm going to make a new layer, just in case I mess up or I want to change them or something. And the speckles are a little bit darker. So I'm going to use a little bit of a darker blue, go a little bit darker. And I'm going to use Butterblade. And I'm just going to give him some speckles manually. And he has a few on his little fin here, so I'll go ahead and put a few on his little fin. And I'll go back to the body. Oh, actually I was doing it on a layer beneath. I'll just merge them down. That's okay. Alright, so last but not least, I'm seeing these little, on his little fins. So what might be nice is to, let's try smudge. So I'm going to try smudge, this little finger. And let's just see how it looks. So we'll go to the fins, and then we'll just try smudging. You can see how that looks. Not the best, but it's good to try it out. It's good to try out different methods. So what I think will be a nicer method is to use my brush Sketchmaster 2. And now I'm still on the fins. I'm just going to make Let's make some fins like that. Actually, I just had a better idea. So hopefully you're still with me. We're almost there. So I'm going to select the fins. Now I'm going to go in a new layer, right above it. So now I'm going to do the same thing that I did. Actually, you know what? Watch this. I'm going to go with graffiti brush. No, actually, I'm going to go with... Yeah, we'll stick with Sketchmaster 2. So I'm going to stick with Sketchmaster 2. I'm going to make those same lines. And I'm going to do it on all of our fins. And I didn't really work this guy out too much. So this is sort of just like freestyle, kind of just like freestyle tutorial. I did the same thing with this this fin. I just selected it and then I made a new layer above. That way I can still make our little lines here. Okay, so now that we have them on separate layers, I'm going to take Erase, Soft Brush. Whoops, let me get out of the selection tool. So now all I have, I'm on the layer with the lines, and I'm just going to erase with the airbrush. And I'm just going to make everything softer. So that'll make our fins nice and the lines nice and soft. And we'll do the same thing with that new right here. Just make our lines nice and soft. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. So here's our original puffer fish. And here's our little homemade little puffer fish who looks super stoked. Oh, also, I almost forgot. So let's do, I'm gonna merge. I'll make a new layer. I always do this with the eyes. I'm gonna use white, and I'm gonna use my brush Shadow 30. You can use graffiti brush and just put it at 30%. That's pretty much what Shadow 30 is. I'm gonna make it smaller. So this is just a white brush at 30% on a very top new layer. So right on the eye, I'm just gonna make my little jelly bean. And then I'm gonna go to Butter Blade, white still, and just make my little circle there. And then we have our little puffer fish. And if I had more time, I would probably make this eye into a similar eye like this, because I just think that looks really good. But maybe I'll do that in a bonus video. I'll do that in a bonus video. But for now, it's looking pretty good. But I'll add that extra little bit in a bonus video. All right. Keep drawing. And I'll see you guys in the next video.